Support for Swan Song is brought to you by viewers like you. Thank you. This episode's title is interesting because it was the last game released for the WonderSwan prior to the release of the WonderSwan Color, starting an almost 2-month gap with no game releases until its release on December 9th, 2000. It's also the second to last monochrome-only game released on the system, with Super Robot Taisen Compact 2 Part 3 having the honor of being the last purely monochrome title, released in January of 2001. However, I've covered that game already in an earlier episode about the Super Robot Taisen Compact 2 trilogy, so for Swan Song purposes, this is going to be the last monochrome title you'll be hearing about in the series, and that title is none other than Tokyo Majin Gakuen Fuju Houroku. It was released on October 12, 2000, developed by Shout Designworks, and published by Asmik Ace Entertainment. Tokyo Majin Gakuen Denki, which translates to Tokyo Wizard Academy Fantasy, is a multimedia franchise published by Asmik Ace and created by Imai Shuho, the founder of Shout Designworks. He founded the company back in 1992 after leaving his pixel artist job over at Atlas, and did a bunch of freelance contract work throughout the 90s. Tokyo Majin Gakuen was the studio's first original creative project, and as far as I can tell, it was successful enough for them to not need to rely on contract work after the turn of the millennium. The series began on the PlayStation in 1998 with the release of Tokyo Majin Gakuen Kenpucho, establishing the mix of visual novel and tactical RPG gameplay that the series is known for, as well as the setting that would tie the series together. While students fighting the supernatural might not seem very novel on its own, Tokyo Majin Gakuen Denki made itself distinct from other video games with similar settings via mechanics, namely its emotion input system. The emotion input system is a cross-shaped UI that appears throughout the game on which the player must indicate their emotional response to the current narrative section. As these choices pile up over the course of the game, they contribute towards unlocking access to extra content and even special endings. The franchise was influential enough to cause other games to adopt similar aesthetic and mechanical traits, grouped together under the Gakuen Juvenile Denki, or Young Adult School Fantasy, subgenre. This isn't limited to games by Imai himself, such as Kowloon High School Chronicle or Tokyo Twilight Ghost Hunters, but also completely unrelated development teams such as the ones behind Tensho Gakuen, Kamiyo Gakuen, and Tokyo Monoharashi. Simply put, Fuju Houroku is a collectible card game take on the Tokyo Majin Gakuen formula. You play as a guardian deity summoned by high school students Mizukane Isuzu and Yamura Shun, and wage battle against demonic threats which show up around town in classic Monster of the Week fashion. Its main single-player campaign mode consists of 13 chapters following a consistent game loop. Visual novel story sections connected to card battles by an interval screen, which gives the player the opportunity to save and tweak their deck before entering battle. Because the entire game is played in portrait orientation, almost 2/3 of the screen is devoted to displaying background art and high-resolution character portraits, with a bottom sliver left over for dialogue. Much like in more traditional entries in the series, you will occasionally run into branching paths which can change the outcome of a scene or reward you with special cards for your deck. The series' trademark emotion input system is also present here, and is especially well suited to the WonderSwan's portrait controls. Each emotion is represented by a button on either of the WonderSwan's directional pads, and pressing the button that best matches the emotion you feel in response to what's happening silently manipulates stats in the background that can result in various payoffs over the course of the game. Card battles in Fuju Houroku feel like they were very obviously inspired by both Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh!, but without feeling like a direct copy of either one. One very important thing to note about this collectible card game is that it never existed in paper. It was designed specifically for this WonderSwan game, and I think a lot of the design decisions that may seem questionable at first were actually genius decisions made in order to make the game play smoothly on a small handheld display. There are 5 main card types in Fuju Houroku: creatures, possessions, mystical barriers, spells, and lands. Creatures can be summoned into 3 dedicated zones and have HP, attack, and speed values. Like in the Pokemon trading card game, when a creature is dealt damage, that damage persists on the creature beyond the end of the turn. A creature can only attack the creature that sits in the zone opposite from theirs on the opponent's side, or the player's life total if no creature is summoned in that zone. The next 3 card types were pretty much ripped directly from Magic the Gathering. Possessions are auras. They are cards which are applied to summoned creatures and give them an additional effect. In Magic, these are traditionally used to buff your own creature or shut down your opponent's problematic creature from attacking you, and these types of effects are also represented in Fuju Houroku. Mystical barriers are just normal, non-aura enchantments. They are permanents that sit in a creature zone and apply an effect to the entire battlefield. Most of the effects in Fuju Houroku replicate the functionality of enchantments you'd find in a typical prison deck. And then spells are just straight up sorceries. Lands are cards which you must include in your deck in order to have sufficient resources, known as action points, to play cards from your hand. Whereas in Magic, lands are permanents which stick on the battlefield and can be interacted with by your opponent's spells and abilities, in Fuju Houroku, these are just a card you play from hand which adds 1 action point to the maximum you can consume every turn, and then enter your graveyard. In Magic, lands generate 1 or more colors of mana, which introduces some risk-reward elements to building multicolored decks, as you can't necessarily guarantee you'll always have the correct colors of mana to cast what you have in hand. In Fuju Houroku, lands do have an associated element which plays a similar role to colors, but cards do not specify any elements in their cost. Instead, players share a resource known as the Elemental Energy Pool, and playing a land of a fire element will add 1 fire energy to that shared pool. Certain creature cards have abilities which are activated when a certain amount of that creature's elemental energy is available in the pool. An affinity system also exists which allows you to funnel existing elemental energy from one element to another, based on the rules of the Chinese Wujing elemental system, potentially causing up to a 3-point energy swing in a single turn. This system keeps the elemental energy pool constantly in flux, and occasionally draining entirely. This can incentivize you to keep playing lands, even if you have plenty of AP already, to keep your abilities online. If your opponent's deck takes better advantage of your primary element than yours does, you may want to hold back on playing lands in order to keep your opponent from accelerating their abilities being online as well. It adds an interesting push and pull mechanic to a game that makes it feel pretty distinct compared to its contemporaries. Oddly enough, land cards in Fuju Houroku are named after landmarks or common types of businesses found around Tokyo. After 8 years of playing Magic the Gathering, it is a bit jarring to be playing lands called Ramen Shop, Shinjuku City Hall, or Kabukicho in a card game filled with demons, but I suppose it is on flavor for this setting. Aside from the single-player story content, Fuju Houroku also provides link battle and link trading modes for players with a link cable and a friend with a copy of the game. Interestingly, the developers tried to balance the trading system such that players can't gain too significant of an advantage too early in the game. For this reason, each card has a card value stat, and players can't trade for cards of higher value than the ones they already have. The way this is worded in the manual makes it seem like it could easily be cheated or bypassed, but since I'm not able to try it out, I guess I'll never know. I didn't come to Fuju Houroku with high expectations. As much as I want to like handheld adaptations of collectible card games like the Pokemon trading card game or the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters series on the Game Boy, oftentimes I feel like they're trying to cram too much into a small, low-resolution screen. I can barely fit a game of the Pokemon TCG on my kitchen counter. How do they think they can fit that into a 160 by 144 grayscale display? It's a miracle that they managed to pull off what they did, and I did enjoy the game at the time, but taking card games designed for tabletop play and retrofitting them into much smaller surfaces generally makes playing them far more awkward than I would like them to be. Fuju Houroku does not run into this issue. It is the most ergonomic handheld card game I have ever played, and it's not even close. And the reason for that is that it was seemingly designed entirely around the target system's limitations from the ground up. How do we build a legitimate card game on a screen that can show at most 6 cards at a time? How can we take mechanics like the Magic Mana system and streamline it to use as little screen real estate as possible? Can we use this platform's unique portrait orientation to allow players to look at their hand and read the entire text of the card simultaneously on the same screen? In 2004, Marvelous Entertainment published a much more content-rich, colorized Game Boy Advance port of Fuju Houroku, and there's no denying it. Color makes the card art in the GBA version absolutely pop, and card properties can be made much more immediately readable by distinguishing them by color. I think the default reaction most people would have to seeing this port is seeing how good it looks and immediately toss the WonderSwan version aside in favor of what they consider to be the definitive version. But in terms of how comfortable it feels to play, don't get fooled. A game designed to neatly fit into the limitations of its target system like this one can't easily be ported over to another platform without making some form of sacrifice. The GBA version, while absolutely lovely to behold, is a claustrophobic mess, and it makes me really sad they didn't hold out until the WonderSwan Colors launch, or make a sequel with color card art. This is the first game I've played where I felt like a colorization ROM hack would really be warranted, and I think I might have to start looking into how one would go about making one of those for this game, because it definitely deserves it. For a lot of gamers, especially in the West, the history of digital native collectible card games began with Hearthstone, which set out to create a card game that felt a bit like Magic the Gathering and would play smoothly on iPhones with 3.5 to 4-inch screens. But 14 years before Hearthstone's release, Fuju Houroku was asking the exact same kinds of questions for a monochrome handheld with a 2.5-inch screen, and produced an absolutely stellar collectible card game that is more to my taste than Hearthstone ever was. This is the first time in the entire Swan Song series where I'm not just pleasantly surprised by a game, but genuinely floored at what this game set out to do and how well it executed on it. I think this may very well be my new favorite WonderSwan game. Obviously, the language barrier is going to be an obstacle here, both to enjoy the story sections and to know what your cards are doing, but if you can handle it, this game is an absolute banger and you need to go check it out.